All right. Welcome to the Peckham Pulse Podcast, where we bring you inside the people, purpose, and passion that fuel Peckham Industries. I'm your host, Steve Benton, Corporate Director of Safety and Risk Management. Safety is a core value of Peckham, not just a priority or a set of regulations. Safety is about people, our family, and friends. The Pulse will provide in-depth conversation on what sparks our passions and how we carry that through to strengthen our safety culture. At Peckham, our mission is to safely provide high-quality construction materials and services, but let's be honest, it all starts with you, our members. But nothing, not a ton of asphalt or a mile of freshly paved highway matters more than making sure everyone goes home safe every single day. Today we have the distinct privilege of having a couple of our senior executives with us, Damian Murphy, our CEO and President, and Bob Yaremko, our Vice President of EHS. So, gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Together we have 44 years in this company.
We certainly do. Wow.
Bob has a lot more than I do.
So, Damian, we'll start with you. There's a lot to talk about. I don't even know where to start, but why don't we start with, I'm not sure all of our listeners even know your full background, but maybe just start from, your hometown and what brought you to the U.S., and maybe we can go into a little bit of Oldcastle Materials, Summit, and then we'll get to Peckham.
Is this going to be like a multi-episode thing? Because it's going to take a while to get through all that. Yeah. I'm number 7 of 8 kids. Grew up on a small little farm back home in Ireland, in Wexford. Everybody else, actually, I got one brother that's in the U.S. now, but everybody else is within 4 miles of where we all grew up. I am a farmer at heart, but there's no money in that. And if anybody knows anything about me, I'm certainly interested in making the money, right? But also more interested, obviously, in safety and building something sustainable. But as they always say, right, if you can't grow it, you have to mine it. So there was a small quarry at the back end of the farm where I grew up, and we used to play in that as kids. And I think I got the stone dust in my lungs, which just went into my blood. So I've been around quarries for quite a long time. Went to school for chemical engineering, but wasn't smart enough to finish that, so I switched to mining. And always wanted to come to the U.S., the land of opportunity. Everybody in Ireland has some contact in the U.S., and we were no different. And we used to get a care package from our cousins back in the day that had $8 bills that my mother would talk about Ireland for the holidays and America for the money. And that stuck with me, right? I never did get those crisp dollar bills, though, wherever they went. But yeah, so got the opportunity to get a green card and came out to the States in 1994 and started off in the gold mines. That was like too much work, so I had to get out of that. And got into the aggregates business with CRH, a company called PJ Keating in Massachusetts, back in 1995. And I've been touring around the U.S. ever since. Obviously, my line is I've lived in 7 states and drank beer in 49 of them. So very familiar with the industry. Been around all facets of it, from the production side to the sales side to the business development side and everything in between. So very passionate about the industry and what we do and how we build America, and just love this game.
Very cool. So we'll follow up. There's a lot to follow up there. But Bob, you've been with Peckham Industries for 40 years.
Somehow 40 years. Yes, it's been a great run.
Tell us a little bit about what brought you to Peckham and, some of your upbringing. I know you're a Manhattan college grad, but maybe go into a little bit of that.
Sure. I grew up in Yonkers, one of 3 boys, middle boy. I decided to get into engineering. I always liked to build things. So I went to a local college. Many of my relatives have gone to Manhattan College, and that's where I met Nancy, my future wife. I was studying in the library, and she stumbled in looking for the bathroom. The rest is history. Out of college, I went to work as a civil engineer down in New York City, working on designing buildings for Thornton Tomasetti, quite a large company. But I missed being out and seeing things being built. So Nancy at the time found an ad in the paper for an estimator for a company called Peckham Road. and it sounded interesting. I remember a friend of mine saying, "You don't know anything about roads." And I said, "I got one in front of my house, and I drive on roads all the time. Like I can do it." So I faked it till I made it. I did estimating. Grew up in Peckham Road. We were down in southern New York and Connecticut at the time. And then one day, someone came along and said, "Bob, we need a safety director, someone to look into that." So I was the first safety director, probably in the early 90s. And safety back then was more of give a guy a shovel, give him some equipment, and say, "Be safe, just do it right." And so that's how I began my career, and I've done a number of different things with the company. And the other thing that I really liked about coming to Peckham was the family. I worked with John Peckham's mom and John Peckham for 40 years, so it's been a unique place. Good ride.
It's interesting. I met Michelle, but it wasn't in the library at college, so I'm not sure I ever did find the library at Colgate. Damian, talk a little bit about, it's interesting. So in 94, I was just stepping out of college and started my career with Callanan Industries, which was one of the first materials purchases of Oldcastle. Talk to us a little bit about, and I know we share some common friends, one being Tom Hill, but maybe share some of your experiences with Oldcastle and then Summit. Obviously, a much different company in terms of size and scope versus Peckham. Maybe talk a little bit about that and some of the differences and maybe some of the similarities too.
Yeah, I mean, you could go down many different avenues to talk about the things that are the same and things that are different. But fundamentally, right, the industry is the same whether you're a small company or a big company. And maybe some of the expectations or the accountability is different between big public companies, and they have a culture of kind of accountability just because they're big public companies, and maybe very attentive to risk and to performance and all those things. Family companies certainly experience the same risks, but maybe look at them differently. And what we're trying to do here, over the last few years, is bring some of the good of the disciplines that the public companies have versus maybe some of the bureaucracy that public companies have. And we haven't gotten that right for sure. We've still got to work on all of that. But fundamentally, there's plenty of things to learn from those experiences, whether it was with Summit or with CRH and even Aggregate Industries versus the public or the private company experiences that I've had. Summit was probably the better one to kind of talk about the journey, because there, we started with 7 employees and no revenue, right? And we built that to 2,000 employees and $4 billion in revenue. But in that journey, you're taking very privately held operations, driven by key leaders, all the way into the realm of being a public company that went through an IPO. So there's a huge amount of change and transformation that needs to happen with that. But in all the cases, you have to bring the teams along with you and really focus on what's the interests of the team and the capability or capacity of the team. And wherever you go into, it's really important to have relationships and build on relationships. And that's really what I've tried to take away from all the companies that I've been in is how do you engage with the frontline members all the way up to the senior members and understand what the needs are all the way through that line. For a public company, the next quarter is important, right? For the guy on the front line, the next week's schedule is important, and then everything else in between. And, we're trying to marry all of those expectations here at Peckham at this point. And, we're having some challenges in doing that, but we're also having some great successes. So we can spend a lot of time talking about the comparisons, but at the end of the day, the risks in our industry are the same everywhere, right? Unfortunately, I've been involved in fatalities in my career, and that is the number one risk, right, that we have. And it doesn't matter if you're a public company or a private company when that happens. It's terrible for everybody. Right. And we all got an ownership to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah. No, for sure. Bob, talk the early days of safety at Peckham. You know, I came on 5 or 6 years ago, and you guys have built the foundation. But maybe just talk a little bit about, you know, kind of how we've transformed from, 30 years ago to today.
Sure, Steve. Well, 30 years ago, we were, like I said previously, just, be safe. Everyone thought they were doing things safe, and it was kind of loose. Small company, when it was kind of get her done attitude. So if, something broke, you climbed up on a plant. You didn't worry about locking out, tagging out. You didn't have PPE. You just made things happen. And, fortunately for a long time, we were okay. But, we certainly, we thought we were good, and we just didn't recognize maybe there was a bit of luck in the things that we were doing that were not safe. So fast forward 10 years ago or so, we started putting more emphasis on safety, grew our safety staff. And at the time, we were more of doing inspections, telling people what to do, probably not looking at the behaviors of those people, just kind of concentrating on the actions and kind of like an MSHA comes in and does, right? So that when you joined Steve, we started turning that around, and certainly when Damian started, kind of question, why are we doing this? Why are you doing inspections like an MSHA would do? Why aren't we talking to employees? Why aren't we engaging employees? And it kind of twisted everything, and we changed, and now we're all about trying to understand and engage the frontline members. It's to change behavior. You got to understand what they're thinking, have their buy-in, get their input, talk to them. Behavior-based safety is so key, and that's where we're at now. So it's been a long journey. I've seen similar companies like us take that journey, and it's fun, it's rewarding. We've got work to do, certainly, but we're on the right path.
And that's a real challenge, right? Because we think one of the behaviors of Peckham, right, and for successful companies is to get the job done, push through, react, jump in, get after it. And, to tell them to take the moment, hey, let's do a slam here. Let's check out the risk. Let's make sure we're not putting ourselves in risk. That's a different mindset. And you don't want to lose the value that people are trying to bring by getting the job done, but you got to just mix that ingredient of the behavior into the result, right?
Most definitely. I remember you saying at one of the meetings, even firemen have a plan before they go into a building. You just can't rush in. You've got to have a plan, and you carry out that plan, and you do it safely.
100%.
So let's talk about engagement for a second. We've really made that, I would say, the fundamental cornerstone of what we do every day, and it's become very important for our culture. So maybe, Damon, talk a little bit about the engagement piece. And I think we've really gotten traction there, and it seems to be a very simple concept, but I don't think every company's doing it, and I think we're starting to get better and better. So let's talk about that for a second.
Well, engagement really is about getting people's ownership into whatever they're doing. And, pretty much all of us are engaged in our own personal lives and what's happening there, right? And work is part of our personal lives. And from my perspective, the more we can get people engaged in that work aspect of their life and take ownership and purpose in it, certainly the more safe they're going to be, but the more they're going to be able to master that opportunity, that role, and the better results we're all going to get as well out of that. We've all had jobs or tasks that are just monotonous and tiresome, and we just don't want to do them. But fundamentally, right, the work that we do has real purpose, certainly in our communities and for the country. And as individuals doing that, we should really be understanding and putting our best effort into that. But we can't do it in isolation, right? We need our leaders in the business. We need our resources to help us make good decisions or be effective in what we do. So everybody has to be engaged in that outcome and in what everybody else is kind of doing and help facilitate that. To me, it's just about getting purpose, right? If you have engagement, you're going to be more satisfied in your day, in your work, in your life. And the way to do that is to have resources around that, have accountability around that as well, and have expectations. But again, the idea of engagement is really just everybody has a part to play, and their voice is important, and we're all working together to make it a better day.
Right. So obviously, Bob and Damian, I mean, we've come a long way. I mean, we show a graph from 2012 up to recent, and the decline has been substantial. Obviously, we haven't gotten to zero yet, but we're getting closer. What are some of the main things you think that maybe have contributed to that, and how do we get to zero? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, we haven't gotten to zero as a total, but we have plenty of areas in our business where we have had zero and we continue to be at zero, right? So the question is, how do we take those lessons from those areas and apply them to the other areas of our business? And we've got some more work to do, I think, to share the best practices, share the good ideas, and share that ownership. But, we're not at zero relative to the total number, but we are at zero in plenty of good areas. And it comes down to that team of those individuals owning the risk, owning the opportunity to avoid that risk, and being active and proactive in their daily exercises, right? You've heard me talk before about the idea of that 1 second that or less that can have a permanent issue for somebody. And we've had 14 fatalities in MSHA already this year, right? None of those people showed up that day thinking that was going to happen for them. And 1 second of issue, it's happened for them. So we got to own that. And we also talked before about trying to find the needle in the haystack, right? To try and avoid the incidents. We're not going to find it. The key is not to have to look for it in the first place. Right. That goes back to the idea of engagement. So the way to get to zero everywhere, right, is that everybody is aware of that 1 second, that they're doing all they can to avoid that 1 second, and stay in the moment, right? Stay engaged in the idea of protecting themselves and protecting each other, right? Protect family and friends.
Bob, the title of our podcast is Passion for Safety, and one of the things we haven't really touched on yet is just, some of the personal passions. What are some of your personal passions that you want to share?
And when we spoke the other day, I had three, and one was the New York Jets, and I just love football, and the Jets have been my team, but I'm not going to talk about that because it's too painful. And my passion is really my family, and I think a lot of people can relate to that and probably say that's their passion. I grew up. My father passed away when I was 5 years old from a heart attack. And I saw my mom and the community around us raise us, and it meant so much to me. And it kind of grew up in that mindset that we've got to watch out for each other and take care of each other. And I've carried that through to my family. And my family and my daughters and my wife Nancy, we are extremely close, and we like to do things together, travel together, and just making sure that they're in the right direction, safe, have a good future. I've bought two of them. Well, I didn't bring them into the company. They decided that they want to do some internships, and next thing you know, I've got two Yaremkos, three, including myself, working for Peckham. So, some things don't get planned. That certainly wasn't the plan, but I'm proud of them, and I'm glad they see the passion that I have for this company. It's one of the things that I think that's carried me through 40 years here, just wanting this company to succeed, to be safe, and to bring opportunities to our members. It all comes together.
Damian, how about you? Personal passions that you care to talk about?
Yeah, we could do 10 episodes alone on the passions I can carry, but certainly family is number one. Got three beautiful daughters, and my wife's a fabulous job in bringing them up and getting them sorted in life. But beyond that, the Irish sport of hurling is probably my number one passion. If you're not familiar with it, go to gaa.ie and look it up. It is totally amateur sport. It's over 2,000 years old. Some of the key aspects of it is that you can only play for the team that you were born to, meaning that, it's driven by your local community, and you play with the team, good, better, and different in that community. And you can move all the way up to representing within your county, which then puts you into kind of the elite end of the sport. And you can play all the way to the All-Ireland finals, which take place every summer in Croke Park, where you'll have 82,000 spectators in watching 30 amateurs playing a game. And it's really phenomenal. The passion with it, the skill involved, it, the intensity, it's absolutely terrific. So that is a huge passion. Beyond that, there's plenty of other sports and stuff that I like to get after. Soccer obviously is a big one, but Glasgow Celtic Football Club is another passion of mine. Travel, I'd say, is probably another big passion. I've said I've been in 49 of the 50 states. Still going to get to Alaska. I've been in half of Canada. I've been plenty countries across the world. So it's a fantastic way to get out and see different things and get different experiences, understand the diversity of people across the planet, but also what we all have in common, right? And I can guarantee you that most people you go to will have the same passions we talk to, which is family, all across this planet. And we can get too bogged down in the differences in people, but the similarities are what I'm interested in, and travel allows you to see that in so many ways. I'm also passionate about this country, the U.S., right? It is the number one country in the world, no matter what people will tell you. And it blows my mind that you got people that are here that had the privilege of being born here and raised here, and will disparage it. It's not perfect, absolutely not, but it is a heck of a lot better than most places in the world. And the opportunities that are here for people are tremendous. And I look forward to the day where we're not all so divisive as we are currently, and we get back to what made America great, which was the Republican spirit of the individual and the collective coming together. So I'm passionate about that for sure, but I'm not running for election.
Really interesting comments. Sometimes it takes somebody from almost the outside to realize how good we have it here, and that's interesting comments for sure. I think a lot of times we take things for granted, and you're right. We've become very divisive, and it's almost scary what's going on out there. But
just to kind of add one final thought to that, we talk about Peckham being a family by choice, right? I always tell people I'm an American by choice.
Interesting.
And that's a privilege.
Yeah. So let's try to talk a little bit more about safety, I guess. Damian, what would sending a message today to our own internal members and to even some of our external customers, what do you see as the most important factor of safety or risk, or what we're trying to accomplish? What do you think is the fundamental message to our internal group and to our external group? Is there a key takeaway, a central message, if you will, that would be important to relay to that group?
It's difficult to kind of sum it all into one thing, right? Because there's so many different aspects to it. But when you think about the kind of the ultimate risks that are out there, right? Fatality obviously is the ultimate risk, but permanent disability is another major risk, and then even short-term disability or injury, right? Pain. Is there anything out there that we're doing is worth any of those as a final result? And when you're out there and you're performing, you're involved, or you're seeing stuff that's risky, or is the final result of that potential worth taking that shortcut or working, around the rules of the regs to get the result, or to even go, in a matter of haste, right? To Bob's point, right? Firemen have a plan going into a fire. They don't just show up and run in. One of my earliest incidents that I was around, I was a concrete labourer working the building sites in London, and we had a situation with a concrete pump that broke down. And, the pumper itself was connected to an articulated dumpster. And, the foreman is screaming about, we need to get this out, we need to get this out. And rather than jumping up into the seat, the operator decided he was going to articulate the back end of the vehicle to hook to the pump from the ground. But he put himself right in the pinch point, went to grab the wheel, pulled it obviously too much, pinched himself, and fractured his pelvis, 18 years old. Permanent disability. What was in that day that was worth that injury? Nothing, right? So the idea that things can't happen to me, it's not true. It can happen to you. And we all got to be aware, we all got to own that decision, not to make those poor decisions, that 1 second that can really impact us.
Right. We've seen that time and time again, and unfortunately, we're still dealing with those at Peckham to some degree, and I think certainly the severity of the injury, I think hopefully is trending down, which is a good thing. I think you and I have both seen some fatalities over our career, and both have pledged to never go through that again. And certainly that's the goal. But the goal is also, I think, to try to eliminate those risks out there so we can reduce even our recordable injuries. Bob, we work so hard at that, and I know some of the bigger companies talk about fatalities and serious injuries. I mean, we're trying to reduce the recordable injuries, and I think that's important. And I don't think we should lose sight of that. Do you?
Certainly, Steve. I think that's so important. Years ago, we didn't track rates, recordables. It was, I wouldn't say it was accepted, but it was just part of the job. So someone got hurt, you patched them up, you went back at it. Now the focus is on, we want to get to zero, and we're tracking numbers. It's so important just to measure yourself so you can continue to get better. And I always challenge all our members, safety's got to start with them. They've got to be accountable for their actions and their behaviors. And each day they've got to get up and do their job and do it in a safe manner. And also watch out for each other. We've got a lot of people with good experience in the company and then young men and women coming into the company. And if we see other members just not acting in an appropriate, safe manner, you gotta stop them. Everyone in this company is empowered and responsible to stop an unsafe action. Just don't walk by it. Years ago, we would just kind of walk by those incidents. Not anymore. And that's how you get accountability throughout the company, and you get to zero. We've done it. We've done it in so many parts of our company where plants and operations have run for decades without an incident. It can be done, and we're going to do it. That's our journey.
I would also add, right, that it's a learned behavior, right? And we've all been around people that will want to take the shortcut, and we've been around people that want to follow every rule and regulation, right? And, the more we practice the good behaviors and the good processes, the lower the risk is, right? Less likelihood that in that moment we're going to make a bad decision. The professional EMTs, right, they're constantly training for that moment that occurs so that they're ready to just follow a process and deliver the right result. And, whether it comes to wearing PPE, wearing your seatbelt, using 3 points of contact, all those are just individual reinforcements of a safe workplace. And we can all say, well, I don't need my glasses in this moment, or I don't need my hard hat, I don't want to wear the chin strap. All those things are just steps to the moment of zero. And if we wear it 3 days a week, our risk is higher, right, for those other 2 days or 3 days. If we wear it every day, the risk is lower. But what's more important is that it just reinforces a constant behavior change. And you learn the good practices as opposed to the bad practices. And that, I've been in this game long enough that I've learned plenty of bad practices, and it's hard to correct them once you learn them, but we all have to do that.
Let's talk a little bit about our safety summits. So last year, or the start of this year, I guess, to start the season, we transformed from our annual trainings where we were having 20 some odd trainings in 5 different states to more of a summit where we consolidated, we put them in strategic spots that matched us geographically in our footprint. And, we brought in some equipment, we brought in some vendors, we've used our own managers to help us train. I think that was really a bit of a milestone for us. Maybe we look back 5 years and say, hey, what got us off that plateau a little bit? I think, it's something I'm personally proud in, and, our team works hard. Lou Merkel is an essential part of that. But from your perspective as a CEO and Bob as a vice president's been here 40 years, what were your thoughts when you kind of stood there and looked at this bit of a production as it turned out? I think it went well, but what are your thoughts? What was your perspective on the Safety Summit?
Yeah, look, from my perspective, I thought it was fantastic, right? It's a real representation of our commitment to protecting our family and friends, right? And making those investments and trying to get people comfortable in an environment that they're more familiar with, rather than sitting in a classroom where they can fall asleep, right? They had the opportunity then to engage, to have the conversations. And, if we can get more people talking about the safety aspects of the workplace, then we're going to end up in a better place for sure. And so that's creating a good, comfortable, familiar environment. It's a big investment, right? It's a big effort to get it all organized, and a big investment just to hire the facilities, get the equipment, get the trainers there. And with that, to get the best value from that, right, we need our members to come there with a mindset of, hey, this is an investment in me, and I'm going to take the time here to take something out of this, right? A lot of the training is perceived as, well, I got to do it, and it's to tick the box. But the real benefit is getting that engagement and bringing it back to the workplace and to the home place. And, I think it's a great first attempt, and I look forward to next seasons and getting more of the frontline members kind of owning the takeaways and the involvement in the day.
Right. Bob, what do you think? I mean, we came afar from sitting in the church to
oh my goodness,
eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Most definitely. I remember in a Patterson quarry doing safety training in the garage. It was cold, and when lunchtime came, everyone just got up and they ate their own lunch. We didn't even buy them lunch. Never mind give them a place with heat. And there was one speaker from the state, and he spoke about safety for 8 hours, and it was tough. And no one got much out of it, but we ticked the box. And now to come full circle, I felt a great amount of pride in just seeing everything that came together. When you and Lou, Steve, were talking about a safety summit, I kind of in the back of my head said, these guys are a little crazy, but well, let's see what they can do. And, with so many people, so many members help, it was pulled together. And I certainly think it, the interaction among members, the having managers and all levels speaking and discussing safety and talking about different topics is key. I thought it was a tremendous success, and it'll only get better. Really well done.
Yeah, and it was fun too, and I think our members see it as well. And I think today, in fact, in a meeting we talked a little bit about just an internal perception survey, and I think kind of shines through, right? Something that we're really proud of. I think that just the commitment from our company, our senior team, our management team to provide those opportunities for members to hands-on, to interact, to engage with vendors, with our own company, to learn their craft even better. And I think when they become masters at it, right, I think inherently they become more safe. And I think that's part of the Peckham Way. And maybe we could touch a little bit on the Peckham Way. Damian, when you came, I think one of your goals was, as we continue to grow, to really try to hold on to the values of that have made Peckham great over the last 100 years. Just maybe touch on a little bit of the Peckham Way and some of those great efforts, because I think that it works closely with safety. I think when people are happy with the company they work for, and I think it carries over into safety when people are focused and they're not worried about equipment that's faulty and some of those risks that you would see 20 years ago. I think just makes the whole atmosphere easier to work with. And I think if they're focused, they're a little bit more safe. So maybe just talk a little bit about the Peckham Way, because we're probably, 2-3 years in, and I think we're really starting to see some great traction from that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we're 101 years into the Peckham Way. We've kind of called it out over the last 2 years in a more formal way. And that's just, look, when I came to Peckham, it was obvious that we had a very dedicated workforce and people committed to the business, right? There was certainly a focus on safety. Integrity was kind of beyond question, and, the dedication was there. And, continuous tinkering, right? Those were all the aspects of the Peckham Way, as we call them out. I've been in growth-orientated businesses, right? Whether it's CRH, Oldcastle as it used to be, and Summit Materials. Every 5 to 7 years as you go through growth, your culture evolves, but some of it changes very fundamentally. And, the CRH that I was in 1995 versus the CRH in 2005 and the CRH today are totally different companies. The Summit Materials that we started in 2009, early stages 2010 and 11, very different to the Summit Materials of 2023. So it was important to me that we held on to those, call them family values or traits in the business that has made us successful and made it the Peckham Way for 101 years, to be called out and carried forward as we evolve, as we grow the business, because those are worth keeping and worth driving the business forward. So, the big one that I always talk about within that is this idea of mastery, right? And mastery touches everything that we do. If we're masters in our tasks, masters of what we do, I guarantee you we'll be at zero from an incident standpoint. I also guarantee you we'll be top performers from a profile standpoint against the competition, that we can be selective in the work that we want and very selective in the people that we want to have with us as well. So to me, that taking that Peckham Way and calling it out and promoting it is a fundamental investment in the future success of the business. And there's nothing in the Peckham Way that should get in the way of people's job performance. In fact, it all should be enhancing that job performance. And, they're just good, solid values for a family business and for your own personal.
Absolutely. Bob, your perspective, I mean, you've worked your entire career at Peckham, essentially, right? And you bring a different perspective. I mean, you've seen it from, the days of John's mother and father, and now, Greg and the onset of Damian coming in. I mean, we've really changed, but, you provide, I think, a unique insight into the Peckham Way, and I think you've been a big part of it. I know you with myself and others, you I think mentoring and instilling those values in folks that are new to the company is important to you.
Yeah. As Damian mentioned, we've been at it 101 years, and it's the only thing I've known. I've kind of grown up in the Peckham Way, but not really calling it out or realizing the values that we have today. Certainly safety, integrity, dedication, efficiency. We live that. But now, as we grow and we're bringing the next generation of leaders, young men and young women into it, it's so important to call it out and say, these are our values. When you work every day, if you're making decisions, these are the values we want you to bring to those decisions. We did it in the past, and you want to carry it on and never lose that. It's so important. The values we have, I don't think anyone could argue against and would want to work for a company that doesn't put them up on a wall, but that lives by them. Bill Peckham, way back when in 1924, one of his quotes was, "My word is my bond." We've always lived that way, good, bad, or indifferent. We make a mistake, we're going to fix it, but we step up and we take care of it. Our integrity throughout Peckham is not questioned, and we're known like that throughout the industry and regulators. It makes it for an easy place to work.
It certainly is. From my perspective, this is my third employer in my career, and I always compare it to the Goldilocks scene where, porridge was too hot, too cold, just right. And there is something special here, really special. And I'm not sure everybody's aware of it because this is the only thing they've known. Going back to Damian's point, when you haven't lived in the U.S. your entire life, you kind of lose sight of what we have, and you take things for granted. But maybe as we kind of wrap up, just as you said, Peckham is in their second century here. What do you guys see the business looking like in the next, 5, 10, 15, 20 years? What are some of the big things as far as just changes you see in the industry, and maybe how those things will impact safety, as we move forward?
Yeah, I mean, from a Peckham perspective, right, our ambition is to continue to grow and evolve the business and remain in the Peckham family hands. So it's more of the same, only bigger, would be kind of the short answer. When you look at the industry space, right, the bigger companies just continue to get bigger in bigger bites all the way through. And that certainly will have an impact as we go forward, but it also gives us opportunity, right, because that differentiator that's in our business, those values and how we show up, those are going to be more and more attractive to our customers, to our potential new members, certainly to our communities, and to potential sellers as well. So I feel that's all very advantageous for Peckham, for the pathway that we're on. Now, with that, we have to execute right, and results do matter, and we've got to be able to earn the right to grow. We've certainly been on a great pathway to make that happen as well. From a industry change standpoint, right, a lot of conversations about AI and about technology and eliminating jobs and stuff, but fundamentally, right, our work output is all going to be down to relationships with customers, relationships with communities, and there's no AI bot that's going to come in and fix a bad road or solve a community's problem. That's really what we got to continue to double down and focus on, is relationships. And there's plenty of room for all of that.
Bob, any additional?
I would just add, I'm thinking about safety and all the different things that are coming with technology, and just making our workplaces safer, whether it's equipment, I'm thinking the cold vest that we just purchased, right? We with the increased heat in the areas where our members work in, having a simple thing like a vest to put on could save someone's life. New technology. So I think technology and ways of doing things just get better and safer. It's no more just get the job done. It's let's plan, and in case of emergency, we have backups, and we have technology that can help our members. We probably don't want to talk about too much autonomous equipment and things like that, because then it gets touchy, about.
Well, there's certainly going to be
jobs, right?
Changes in equipment and how it's all utilized, but you still need people around all of those aspects. Maybe not so much in the driver's seat in some cases, but certainly there's always going to be a need for people in our business. Doing maybe more of the fun stuff than having to just sit in a haul truck all day, which can be fun too.
Well, that's true too. And, I think back of some of the changes we made to plants, that they just run more steady. Our members can plan their week. They're not, we're not breaking down. They're not working 12, 14-hour days, or saying, on a Friday, hey, can you come in tomorrow and run the plant? No, that member wants to spend some time with his family, and now they're with plants that they can run continuously, and we're not having breakdowns. That it just brings back and balances that family life. In the old days, we weren't worried about family work-life balance, right?
What was that? Well, just to conclude, guys, any parting thoughts or comments? I mean, it's a journey, right? It's a bit of a marathon. It's not a sprint. We've been doing this a long time, but again, I think we take immense pride in the results. And we all want to get to zero like yesterday, but I think we continue to chip away. We've got some great initiatives with the Pekkham Way, with our engagement program, with the Passion for Safety campaign that we're involved in now. So a lot of great things going on, but just any final thoughts, guys?
No, I think we're in a terrific place, with the business in general. And I know, for different areas of the business, you go through cycles and, get concerned about the workload and concerned about where the economy is and all of those things. But fundamentally, this business has progressed, for 101 years and continues to grow. There's little opportunity here for those that want it. When you look at the safety record of the business, we've made a lot of investments in training and supplies and resources, setting out expectations, getting people's involvement, and we're in a very strong place. And to that point of zero, we have lots of zeros in our business, and we should be celebrating that and learning from that. And my goal as we go forward is to continue to recognize that powerful performance and that ownership that's out there in so many areas of our business. And the challenge is, how do we get it in all areas and get away from that 1 second? And I'm very confident as we look out 5 years that we'll be much more closer, if not already achieving that zero, than we are today.
It's a great point. I would say we looked at it last year, and we're always north of 80% probably, or closer to 90% of all of our operations that actually achieve zero currently. So it's we are close. We're down to incidents that we can count on both hands. But again, I think we're all trying to get to that zero, which is hopefully we're close, Bob.
Yeah, and I would just again challenge every member, just every day, every part of their job, think of how we're going to do it safely and watch out for the people around us. That's how we'll get to zero. Make those right decisions. The future is bright. The company's growing. We're in a good hands. A lot of good people going in the right direction. And if you're listening to this podcast, get involved. Don't sit back and watch someone else do it. Take the initiative. Safety's got to be part of your job every day, every moment, every second. Make it personal.
Yeah, I'll just add, right? I'm just so proud of this organization, this company, all the people out there, because the work that we do is not the sexy work, right? It's not the stuff that you see on TV, but it is the stuff that makes everything else possible. And you heard me say it before, right? We are as important in our communities, if not more so, than teachers and doctors and the policemen, and certainly more important than the politicians, I guarantee you that. But we should really celebrate that as well, that we've got a fundamental place in our society. And we build America, we build civilization, and we should be proud of it. And I thank everybody for the efforts that they put in every day.
At Peckham Industries, safety isn't something we talk about when it's convenient. It's who we are and how we show up every day, every shift. Safety is a core value, just like integrity, dedication, and efficiency. So here's our challenge to you. Let your passion for safety lead the way, every shift, every task, every day. Thanks for tuning in to the Peckham Pulse. Stay safe, stay passionate, and be proud knowing that we're building America's infrastructure.